Black Waitress whispered. That's the wrong formula. To the billionaire CEO, before $100 million deal. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. The air was thick with tension inside the private room at one of the most prestigious restaurants in downtown Manhattan. The type of place where the walls are adorned with the finest art and the tables set with linens so white they seem to glow under the dim lighting. Tonight, this room wasn't just for dining. It was for power plays and billion-dollar deals. At the head of the table sat Jacob Wills, the CEO of Wills Tech Solutions, one of the most influential figures in the world of cutting-edge technology. His reputation was built on a series of successful acquisitions and a relentless drive to be the best. He was used to being the smartest person in the room, and tonight was no different. Surrounding him were some of the most influential investors in the tech world, eager to finalize the deal that could put Wills Tech Solutions at the forefront of artificial intelligence, a deal worth over $100 million. Jacob's confidence was unmatched. He smiled and leaned back in his chair as his team presented the final proposal, filled with complex algorithms, growth projections, and plans to dominate the AI market. As he listened, his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He was about to make history. But at the back of the room, unnoticed and seemingly invisible, stood Maya, a young black waitress. Maya had been working at the restaurant for over 2 years, navigating the challenges of serving in a high-class establishment where the wealthy and powerful seemed to live in a different world. She had seen it all, the condescending glances, the whispers about her being just another server. But Maya had learned to keep her head down, doing her job with grace and precision, all while remaining quiet and unnoticed. However, tonight was different. Tonight, something about the presentation caught her attention. As Jacob's team went through the final numbers, Maya's sharp eyes noticed something that no one else had. The figures didn't add up. She had always been good with numbers, a gift that had gone unnoticed by most. She had a knack for math, a talent that she had developed over the years, working on her own and taking courses whenever she had time. But no one at the table knew that. They only saw a waitress. Maya stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't stay silent any longer. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice calm but firm. Jacob's eyes narrowed as he looked up, surprised to see her speaking. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to her. Maya could feel the weight of their gazes on her, but she stood tall, her hands steady. "That's the wrong formula," she said softly, pointing to the screen that displayed the growth projections. A moment of confusion passed across Jacob's face. He looked at his team, then back at Maya, his eyebrow raised in disbelief. "Excuse me," he asked, his tone condescending. "Are you suggesting that I'm suggesting that you're overlooking a crucial variable in your calculations," Maya interrupted, her voice now gaining strength. The room grew even quieter. Maya had the attention of the most powerful people in the room, and she wasn't backing down. Jacob looked at his team, unsure of how to respond. He had never been challenged like this by someone in her position. But Maya wasn't done yet. She walked over to the screen, pointing out the error in the numbers with precise clarity. Her understanding of the financial model was impeccable. She explained the mistake in such a way that even the most experienced investors in the room couldn't deny it. Jacob sat in stunned silence. It wasn't just her knowledge that shocked him. It was the confidence with which she spoke. The confidence that had been absent from the room since the moment the deal began. As the minutes passed, the room slowly came to life. The investors began to murmur among themselves, clearly impressed. Jacob, however, was still processing what had just happened. He had underestimated Maya, and in doing so, had almost jeopardized the entire deal. It was in that moment that Jacob Wills realized something. Maya was not just a waitress. She was someone who had the ability to change the course of this deal. What happened next would flip the power dynamic in the room and prove that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most weight. The silence in the room was almost deafening. Every eye was on Maya as she stood before the screen, her fingers still pointing to the error in the calculations. Jacob Wills, The billionaire CEO of Will's Tech Solutions sat back in his chair, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. He had never been challenged like this before. His team, the investors, and even the highest-ranking members of his company had all been completely focused on this deal, confident in its success. But now, everything was on hold, and it was because of a waitress. The room shifted. Maya, once invisible, now commanded the attention of the most powerful men and women in the room. She had done what they all thought impossible, challenged the genius of a billionaire's business empire. For a moment, Jacob didn't know how to react. He wasn't used to being wrong, especially not in front of people who had so much to lose. He opened his mouth, ready to dismiss her, but something stopped him. Her knowledge, her confidence, and the way she had so effortlessly exposed the flaw in their plan gave him pause. The room held its breath. It was clear that Maya had earned the respect of everyone there, even if it was hard to admit. The investors looked at one another, clearly impressed by her intellect. The billionaire CEO himself finally spoke, but his tone was different now, lacking the arrogance that had dominated the earlier conversation. "Explain it to me again," Jacob said, his voice quieter than it had been all evening. Maya took a step forward, still calm, still composed, but now with an even stronger presence. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was someone who had just single-handedly saved this multi-million-dollar deal from falling apart. "The numbers don't add up," she began, her voice steady. "The formula you're using for the projected growth of the AI market doesn't account for the variable in consumer behavior post-2025. There's a spike in interest, but not enough to justify the initial growth rate you've projected. The formula is too optimistic and will set you up for failure in the long run." Jacob's eyebrows furrowed. He was still trying to comprehend the depth of what Maya had just said. For a moment, he questioned himself. How could he have missed this? How could a waitress, someone he had so casually dismissed, be the one to point out this flaw? "How do you know this?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Maya didn't hesitate. "I've been following the AI market for years. I've read reports, taken courses, and analyzed trends. You're not the only one who's been doing the math." There was a slight pause as the room absorbed her words. The investors exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding in agreement with her assessment. Maya had not only identified the flaw but had also presented a solution, a more realistic projection for the market growth based on data that they had overlooked. The room was starting to see Maya for who she really was, a knowledgeable, skilled professional who could hold her own in a room full of billionaires. Jacob stared at her, trying to process the shift in power. He had always been the one in control, but now, he felt small. He had been outplayed, not by his own team, but by someone he had treated like a servant. His pride was bruised, but it was nothing compared to the realization that the deal he had worked so hard for could have been a disaster if it hadn't been for Maya's intervention. Finally, he spoke, this time with a hint of respect in his voice. "I think we need to reconsider our approach," he said, his tone different, more open. "Maya, would you mind sitting in on the rest of this meeting?" The words felt strange coming from him, but there was no denying the truth. Maya had earned her place at the table. She nodded calmly, her eyes steady. "Of course," she replied, her voice confident but not arrogant. It was clear that Maya had just turned the tables, not only in the business deal, but in the way the room saw her. What started as a simple mistake had become a defining moment, a moment when a waitress became the most important person in the room. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. What had started as a simple business meeting with a few high-level executives had transformed into a defining moment for Maya. As the meeting progressed, she sat at the table alongside the investors, Jacob, and his team, now a full participant in the discussion. The once quiet waitress was no longer in the shadows. Her insights and intelligence had earned her a seat at the table. Jacob Wills, the billionaire CEO, seemed to have recognized the magnitude of what had just transpired. Gone was the cocky, dismissive attitude he had earlier shown. Now, he was listening intently to every word Maya said, his previous arrogance replaced with genuine respect. The investors around the table, initially skeptical, were now looking at Maya with admiration. Her ability to dissect the business proposal with such precision was nothing short of impressive. The room, filled with some of the brightest minds in the industry, was starting to realize that Maya was more than just a waitress. She had an acute understanding of the market, of business strategy, and of human behavior. As the meeting went on, Maya's presence became increasingly influential. She suggested adjustments to the growth projections that made more sense in the current climate. She offered insights into the risks of underestimating consumer behavior and the importance of flexibility in strategy. She even proposed a new angle for their marketing campaign, one that targeted untapped audiences, drawing from her own experience working with a diverse group of customers at the restaurant. Jacob was visibly impressed, but he wasn't the only one. Several of the investors leaned in, engaging more deeply with Maya's ideas. One of them, a senior partner from a major investment firm, turned to her and said, "I have to admit, I didn't expect this. Your knowledge is impressive." Maya smiled, not out of pride, but with the understanding that this moment had not been about proving herself to anyone. It had been about doing what was right. She wasn't out to gain validation from these men. She simply wanted to see the deal succeed, to ensure that the company could avoid costly mistakes that could affect not just the stakeholders, but the employees and their families too. As the conversation continued, Jacob asked Maya to present her new projections to the team. He gave her the floor, allowing her to lead the discussion on the new direction they needed to take. For the first time that evening, Maya felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The other investors followed her lead, asking insightful questions and challenging the assumptions she had made. But Maya was prepared. She had done her homework, and she had the data to back up every word she said. It was clear that this was a turning point, not just for the deal, but for Maya's life. By the end of the meeting, Jacob leaned forward and looked at her, his voice soft but sincere. "Maya, I have to admit, I underestimated you," he said. "But I'm glad I didn't dismiss you completely. You've saved this deal and given us a fresh perspective that we desperately needed." Maya nodded, her expression calm. She wasn't in this for recognition or accolades. She was in it to make a difference. "I'm just glad to help," she replied. The investors exchanged glances, impressed by her humility. As they finalized the deal, Jacob turned to Maya once more. "We need someone with your skills on our team. I think we'd be lucky to have you as a consultant," he said. Maya smiled politely, but inside, she knew this was only the beginning. She had proven her worth, not just to the men around the table, but to herself. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a respected professional in her own right, and she had earned that respect through hard work, intelligence, and a quiet strength that no one could ignore. As she walked out of the meeting room that day, Maya felt the weight of the moment settle in. She had been underestimated, dismissed, and looked over. But now, her voice had been heard, and the world had seen her for who she truly was. The following days after the meeting were a blur for Maya. The deal had closed successfully, and Wills Tech Solutions was now on the fast track to dominating the AI market. Jacob Wills, the billionaire CEO, had kept his word, and Maya had become an integral part of the project. Her role as a consultant quickly grew, as her ideas proved invaluable in fine-tuning the company's approach. She was no longer just a waitress, no longer the quiet woman who carried trays at high-end restaurants. Maya was now a trusted advisor to one of the most influential tech companies in the world. But even as her professional life began to soar, Maya remained grounded. She continued to work with the same dedication and precision that had earned her respect in the first place. Her reputation spread, not just as a skilled professional, but as someone who could think critically, challenge assumptions, and bring fresh perspectives to the table. Jacob, once the man who had dismissed her, now sought her out for advice, and it wasn't long before he began to rely on her for critical decision-making. In a meeting just weeks after the deal closed, Jacob turned to her for her input on a new initiative that could potentially change the future of the company. "Maya, we're looking at new partnerships with some of the biggest players in the AI industry," he said. "I want your perspective. What's your take?" Maya didn't hesitate. She leaned forward, her mind already analyzing the options in front of her. "The partnerships are important, but you need to focus on scalability. Right now, the market is ripe for disruption, but if you move too quickly without laying a solid foundation, you risk overextending," she explained, her tone calm yet firm. "We need a strategy that's sustainable, not just for now, but for the future. Slow growth might feel like a step back, but in the long run, it'll give you a stronger foothold." Jacob listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. He had come to realize that Maya's insights were worth more than any consultant they could have hired. Over the past few weeks, he had watched as she meticulously dissected data, analyzed market trends, and offered solutions that no one else had considered. She had become a linchpin in the company's new direction. Outside the office, Maya's life had changed in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had moved into a new apartment, a quiet but cozy place in a neighborhood that felt like a fresh start. It wasn't luxurious, but it was hers. She spent her evenings on the couch, sipping tea, reflecting on how far she had come, from being dismissed and underestimated, to now sitting at the table where deals worth millions were made. She couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. But even as her professional life flourished, she made sure not to forget her roots. Maya continued to volunteer at community centers, helping young people who were in the same position she had once been, undervalued, overlooked, and struggling to find a way out. One afternoon, she found herself back at the Bayou Spoon, the restaurant where it all began. The familiar clink of glasses and the hum of conversations brought a wave of nostalgia. As she sat at the bar, sipping on her usual drink, she thought about the day everything changed. It was here, in this very space, where she had been nothing more than a waitress. And it was here where she had proven that no one should ever be underestimated. As Maya stared out the window, watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of orange and purple, she felt a deep sense of contentment. She had worked hard to get to where she was, but the journey wasn't over. She had just begun to scratch the surface of what she could achieve. Maya knew that she wasn't just a success story. She was proof that with the right mindset, the quietest voices could make the loudest impact. And that realization made everything worth it. Weeks had passed since Maya had become an integral part of the team at Will's Tech Solutions. The once quiet and humble waitress was now a trusted advisor to the top minds in the tech world. But as the months went by, Maya found herself at a crossroads. While her professional life had never been better, there was something missing, a deeper sense of fulfillment. Despite the newfound respect and the successful career path she had forged, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was still on the outside looking in. Her rise in the business world had been quick, but it had also come with a cost. She was now working longer hours, attending high-profile meetings, and dealing with problems that she had never imagined. She wasn't just solving equations or pointing out flaws in business strategies anymore. Now, she was faced with big decisions that would affect not just her life, but the lives of countless employees, investors, and stakeholders. One evening, after a long day at the office, Maya sat at her desk, staring at a new proposal in front of her. The numbers didn't sit right with her. The projections seemed too optimistic, and the risks were understated. She had a gut feeling that something was off. But this wasn't just a proposal for a small project. It was a new acquisition, one that could potentially double the company's value in just a few years. The pressure was immense. Maya knew that her opinion now carried weight, but the thought of challenging Jacob Wills, the man who had once dismissed her, felt like an insurmountable task. Yet, she knew what she had to do. She picked up the phone and dialed his number. The phone rang a few times before Jacob picked up. "Maya," he answered, his voice warm but tired. "What's up?" "I need to talk to you about the acquisition proposal," Maya said, her voice calm but firm. "I've been reviewing the numbers, and I think we're overlooking some key factors. If we go ahead with this, we might be setting ourselves up for a bigger risk than we're willing to take." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Maya could hear the sound of papers shuffling before Jacob spoke. "I trust your judgment, Maya," he said, his tone shifting. "Let's meet tomorrow morning to go over it." The next morning, Maya arrived at the office early. She had spent the night reviewing every aspect of the proposal, double-checking the calculations, and making sure she had every piece of data at her disposal. When Jacob walked into the conference room, he was surprised to see her already there, prepared and confident. "Maya, I have to admit, I'm impressed," he said, taking a seat across from her. "I've never seen anyone dive into the numbers like you do. What's your take on this?" Maya didn't hesitate. "The acquisition looks promising on paper, but it's based on assumptions that aren't fully supported by data. There are external market factors we haven't accounted for, and we're projecting growth at a rate that isn't realistic." Jacob listened intently as Maya explained her analysis, pointing out the discrepancies in the forecast. She suggested a different approach, one that was more cautious and sustainable. It was a far cry from the aggressive strategy the company had initially planned. "You're right," Jacob said after a long silence. "We've been so focused on growth that we didn't stop to consider the risks. Let's revise the proposal and take a step back. We'll slow down the process and ensure that we're not jumping into something we're not fully prepared for." Maya smiled, knowing that this was a pivotal moment. Jacob had once been the person who had dismissed her ideas without a second thought, but now he was acknowledging her expertise and following her lead. That moment felt like a victory, not just for the company, but for Maya personally. As the days passed, the revised proposal was approved, and the acquisition process began with a much more measured and thoughtful approach. The company's leadership had learned an important lesson. Sometimes, taking a step back and reassessing was more valuable than rushing forward with unchecked ambition. Maya had not only proven herself as a businesswoman, but she had also shown that her voice could make a difference in shaping the future of a billion-dollar company. In the weeks that followed, Jacob continued to turn to Maya for her insights. He trusted her more than ever, and the respect between them had grown into a true partnership. Maya's role at Will's Tech Solutions had evolved. She was no longer just a consultant or advisor. She was an essential part of the decision-making process. And with each challenge they faced together, Maya felt more confident in her place in the company and in her ability to navigate the high-stakes world of tech business. The woman who had once served drinks and cleared plates now sat at the table where the most important decisions were made. And she had proven, time and time again, that her worth was beyond measure. Months passed, and Maya's reputation continued to grow. She was no longer just the brilliant consultant behind closed doors. She had become the face of innovation at Will's Tech Solutions. The company had turned a corner, and it was now leading the industry in ways they had never anticipated. Maya's cautious approach to growth, combined with her brilliant foresight, had saved the company from several potential disasters, and her involvement in key decision-making had proven invaluable. But success brought its own set of challenges. The pressure to maintain this new level of performance weighed heavily on Maya's shoulders. Her role had expanded beyond what she had ever imagined. No longer confined to reviewing proposals, she was now at the forefront of strategy meetings, overseeing some of the most pivotal projects in the company's history. The long hours, constant meetings, and high expectations began to take their toll. Maya found herself questioning if the work she was doing still aligned with her personal values. As much as she enjoyed the recognition and the impact she was making, there were moments when she missed the simplicity of her former life. She missed the feeling of doing something purely for the joy of it, without the weight of responsibility. One evening, as she sat alone in her office, staring at the latest set of numbers for a new venture they were pursuing, Maya felt an overwhelming sense of doubt. The data looked good, too good, in fact. The projections were optimistic, but something didn't sit right with her. Her instincts told her that they were pushing the limits of what the market could handle. She stared at the screen, torn between her responsibility to the company and the need to stay true to her values. After a long pause, she picked up the phone. "Jacob," she said when he answered, "I need to talk to you about the new project. I've been looking at the numbers, and I think we need to reconsider our approach." Jacob's voice came through the phone, steady and reassuring. "Maya, I trust you. Tell me what's on your mind. I know the projections look good, but I don't think we've fully accounted for the potential risks. We're pushing for too much, too fast. If we move forward like this, we could be setting ourselves up for failure," she explained, her voice firm but cautious. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Jacob spoke, his tone more serious than it had ever been before. "You're right," he said. "We've been so focused on growth that we haven't stopped to think about sustainability. Let's take a step back and reevaluate everything." The conversation marked a turning point. Jacob, who had once seen her as a mere waitress, was now deferring to her judgment in matters of business strategy. They spent the next few weeks reworking their approach, focusing on long-term sustainability rather than rapid expansion. Maya's cautious nature had proven once again to be their greatest asset. As the project evolved, it became clear that they had made the right decision. The company grew, but it did so in a way that ensured its stability and longevity. Maya's influence had become undeniable. She wasn't just a part of the team. She was the one steering the ship through uncertain waters. But it wasn't just about the business. As the months went by, Maya realized that her role had evolved beyond just making smart decisions for the company. She had become a mentor to others, especially women and minorities, who sought her advice and guidance. She used her position to create opportunities for those who had once been overlooked, just as she had been. One day, as she walked through the office, she stopped to speak with one of the junior analysts. "I want to help you reach your potential," Maya said with a smile. "You've got what it takes, and I'm here to make sure you get the chance to prove it." The young woman, taken aback by Maya's words, nodded gratefully. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with appreciation. "I won't let you down." Maya smiled and walked away, feeling a sense of fulfillment that had eluded her for so long. She had found her purpose, not just in leading a successful company, but in lifting others up along the way. She realized that the true measure of success wasn't just about the deals, the numbers, or the accolades. It was about making a difference in the lives of others and showing them that their worth was not determined by their background or their position. Maya had proven that with hard work, intelligence, and a refusal to be overlooked, anyone could change the course of their life. And in doing so, she had redefined what success meant, not just for herself, but for everyone who came after her. The weeks following the decision to take a more sustainable approach proved to be transformative for both Will's Tech Solutions and Maya. The company had hit new milestones, securing partnerships that promised to stabilize their growth and open new avenues for innovation. As the business continued to thrive, so did Maya's influence within the company. She was no longer just a consultant or advisor. She was a true leader, shaping the company's future. But with this new position came a greater sense of responsibility. Maya had always been driven by her instincts and her desire to do things the right way, but now, those instincts were being tested on a larger scale. As the head of several important projects, she was constantly faced with decisions that could impact the direction of the company. Yet, with each challenge, Maya proved herself time and time again. One particularly difficult decision came when Will's Tech was presented with the opportunity to acquire a smaller startup. The company had an innovative product that could revolutionize one of their key projects, but it came with its own set of risks. The startup's financials were unstable, and the team was still in its early stages, lacking the infrastructure that Will's Tech had worked so hard to build. Jacob Wills, the CEO, was enthusiastic about the potential, eager to acquire the startup and incorporate their product into their pipeline. But Maya wasn't convinced. She had seen firsthand how risky fast-tracking an acquisition could be, and she wasn't willing to overlook the red flags. "Jacob, I know you're excited about this acquisition," Maya said in a meeting with him and the rest of the leadership team. "But we need to slow down and assess whether it's really in the company's best interest. The product might be great, but we're getting into a situation that could put us in a position we're not prepared for." Jacob listened carefully, and for the first time in a long while, he seemed to be considering the possibility that Maya might be right. "What's your concern?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "The product's good, but we don't have enough data to make a safe investment," Maya replied. "If we move forward with this acquisition without a thorough assessment, we could be taking on too much risk. We need to ensure that we're not jeopardizing everything we've worked for just to grab something shiny." The room was silent for a moment. The other leaders around the table were hesitant, unsure whether to challenge Jacob's enthusiasm. But Maya's clear-headed reasoning and her history of making smart, data-driven decisions gave her the confidence to stand her ground. Jacob nodded slowly, a rare gesture of hesitation from someone who had always been quick to make decisions. "You've made a good point, Maya," he said finally. "Let's take a step back and really look at this. We'll pause the acquisition process and dive deeper into their financials, their team structure, and their product readiness." Maya's calm, assertive approach had once again steered the company in the right direction. As the acquisition process was put on hold for further analysis, it became clear that Maya's ability to balance risk with reward was becoming a cornerstone of the company's strategy. Meanwhile, Maya's personal life had also evolved. She had found a new balance between work and home, taking time to enjoy the little things that had once seemed so out of reach. On weekends, she would visit her mother, who had been her rock through all the challenges she had faced. Maya also reconnected with her old friends, the ones who had known her when she was just a waitress, struggling to make ends meet. They marveled at her success, but Maya never let the praise go to her head. She was still the same person they had always known. Only now, her confidence came from a place of experience. Despite all the success, Maya knew that the true measure of her growth wasn't in the numbers or the accolades. It was in the way she had stayed true to herself. She had never forgotten the lessons she had learned while working at the restaurant, the values that had shaped her character: hard work, humility, and the belief that every person had something valuable to offer. As Maya continued to rise in her career, she kept looking for ways to give back, to mentor those who, like her, had been underestimated. She used her position not just to lead, but to open doors for others, particularly women and people of color who often faced the same barriers she had. Maya's journey had come full circle. She was no longer a woman striving to prove herself. She had become a beacon of possibility for others, showing that no matter where you started, you could create your own path to success. The influence she had on the company, on her team, and on the people who admired her was undeniable. Maya had not just found success in the business world. She had built a legacy that would inspire generations to come. As Maya's influence within Will's Tech Solutions grew, so did her sense of responsibility. She had proven herself time and time again, not just with her intellect and decision-making, but with her ability to see the bigger picture. But now, she found herself facing a new challenge, one that was more personal than professional. As the company expanded and the pressure to maintain their growth increased, Maya found herself at a crossroads in her career. She was constantly in meetings, traveling for business, and making decisions that affected the future of the company. Yet, she felt disconnected from the very people who had supported her all along. The friends and family who had seen her rise from a waitress to a key player in one of the most influential tech companies in the world. One night, after a long day of meetings and strategy sessions, Maya sat at her desk, scrolling through her calendar. The days ahead were packed with conferences, product launches, and investor calls. She sighed, feeling the weight of her schedule bearing down on her. She had always been the type of person who was driven by purpose, but lately, she felt like she was losing touch with the things that mattered most to her. She hadn't seen her mother in weeks, and her old friends had started to drift away. As much as she had achieved, she realized that she had become so consumed by her work that she had forgotten the things that grounded her. The next morning, Maya made a decision. She was going to take a step back. For the first time in a long time, she reached out to her mother and scheduled a weekend visit. She also called up her closest friends, inviting them to dinner. "I've been so caught up in everything lately," Maya confessed to them when they met at a cozy restaurant in the city. "I've forgotten the things that matter, spending time with the people who have always had my back. I don't want to lose sight of that." Her friends smiled, understanding exactly what she meant. Maya had come so far, but she had never wanted her success to come at the expense of her relationships. The dinner was a reminder of the simple joys she had once enjoyed. They laughed, reminisced about old times, and Maya realized just how much she had missed the support and love of the people who had been there from the very beginning. It was a humbling experience that reminded her that no amount of professional success could replace the genuine connections she had with her loved ones. As the weekend came to a close, Maya felt rejuvenated. She had found a new balance, one that allowed her to continue thriving professionally while also nurturing her personal life. She had learned that taking time for herself and the people she cared about wasn't a sign of weakness or distraction. It was a necessity for long-term success. Back at Will's Tech, Maya brought a renewed sense of energy and focus to her work. She was more effective in meetings, more present in her interactions with the team, and more decisive in the decisions she made. But she had also become a better leader. She began encouraging her colleagues to take time for themselves, to step away from their work when they felt overwhelmed. She understood better than anyone that success wasn't just about working harder. It was about working smarter and maintaining balance. In the months that followed, Will's Tech Solutions continued to grow, but it did so in a more sustainable and humane way. Maya's leadership style had influenced the company culture. They focused on innovation, but also on mental health, well-being, and creating a work environment that supported the people behind the ideas. Maya knew that her journey was far from over. She had achieved so much, but there was still more to accomplish. She still had a vision for where she wanted the company to go and how she wanted to make an impact. But now, Maya understood something that had eluded her before. True success wasn't just about the milestones and accolades. It was about living a life that felt aligned with her values, surrounded by people who made her feel whole. And as she continued to lead Will's Tech Solutions, Maya knew that the most important thing she could do was to continue to lift others up, to create opportunities for those who, like her, had been overlooked, and to lead with both strength and compassion. As the months passed, Maya continued to solidify her position at Will's Tech Solutions. Her ability to balance the demands of her high-powered career with her commitment to personal well-being had become a model for others in the company. The culture at Will's Tech was evolving, and Maya's influence was felt in every corner of the business. She had become not just a leader, but a mentor to many, especially women and minorities, showing them that success was possible regardless of their background. Her own journey from being an underestimated waitress to the top ranks of a billion-dollar tech company had proven that with resilience, determination, and a clear vision, anyone could rewrite their story. But it wasn't just about the work. Maya had made time for the things that mattered most: her family, her friends, and herself. Her weekends were spent visiting her mother, taking long walks in the park, and enjoying quiet nights at home, something she had missed during the frantic pace of her earlier success. She still took time to reflect on her journey, on the quiet moments of clarity when she realized that success, for her, was never about the titles or the accolades. It was about the people she could help along the way, the difference she could make, and the legacy she would leave behind. One evening, as she sat in her office looking out over the city, Maya thought about how far she had come. She had been that quiet waitress, dismissed by those around her. She had faced countless obstacles, each one threatening to keep her in the shadows. Yet here she was, leading a company, changing lives, and inspiring a new generation of leaders. But Maya knew that her journey wasn't just about her success. It was about creating opportunities for others. She had never forgotten where she came from, and it was that understanding that drove her to help those around her. She had seen firsthand how important it was to give people a chance, to see potential where others might see only limitations. Her phone buzzed with an email from one of the young women she had mentored. She opened it, reading the words that made her heart swell with pride. "Thank you for believing in me. Because of your guidance, I'm taking on a leadership role in the company, and I'm going to help others the way you helped me." Maya smiled, her eyes misting over. It wasn't the accolades that mattered. It was moments like this. Moments when she knew that her influence had made a real difference in someone else's life. She leaned back in her chair, reflecting on all that she had accomplished. She thought about the people who had stood by her, who had supported her when she was nothing but a waitress with big dreams. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the sacrifices she had made, and the strength it had taken to get to where she was. Maya had never imagined that one day she would be sitting in a CEO's office, making decisions that shaped the future of a company. But she had always believed in herself, even when no one else did. She had never let anyone's opinion of her define who she was or what she could achieve. As she looked ahead, Maya knew that the road was still long, and there were many more challenges to face. But she was ready. She had learned that success wasn't just about the destination. It was about the journey, the lessons learned along the way, and the people whose lives were changed as a result. Maya had become a symbol of what was possible when you didn't give up, when you stayed true to your values, and when you were willing to fight for your dreams. She had gone from being a woman who was overlooked and underestimated to becoming one of the most influential leaders in the tech industry. And as she continued to lead, inspire, and uplift others, Maya knew that her story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Maya's journey is an inspiring tale of resilience and determination. From starting as a black waitress, underestimated by those around her, to becoming one of the most influential leaders in the tech industry, her story exemplifies the power of perseverance. In this black story, Maya's transformation is a testament to the untapped potential that lies within individuals who are often overlooked. Despite facing many challenges and being dismissed by powerful figures, Maya's keen intelligence and unwavering self-belief allowed her to rise above the stereotypes and redefine success on her own terms. As she grew into her role at Will's Tech Solutions, Maya became not only a trusted advisor but also a mentor, helping others who, like her, had once been dismissed based on their background. This black story demonstrates how important it is to lift others as you rise, and how giving back can create lasting change. Through hard work, Maya shaped a new path in the corporate world, proving that success is not just about power or wealth, but about making a meaningful impact. As the story unfolds, we see Maya challenge not just the expectations placed on her, but also the limits of the tech industry, inspiring countless others to believe that their dreams are within reach. This Black story is more than a tale of business triumph. It's a reflection of the strength that lies in overcoming adversity, staying true to one's roots, and using one's position to create opportunities for others. The lessons from this Black story continue to resonate, showing that no matter where you start, with the right mindset, determination, and support, you can achieve greatness and inspire others to do the same.